I'm Emily, 32. Standing in the middle of the opulent ballroom at the prestigious Silver Lake Country Club, I clutch my champagne glass so tightly that my knuckles turn white. The crystal in my hand shimmers under the soft glow of the chandeliers, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. My father, Henry, a towering figure in the construction industry, stands at the podium. His voice, usually so authoritative, cuts through the air like a blade. "You're the biggest disgrace to this family," he bellows, his words echoing in the silent room. The gasps from the 200 guests, the city's most influential people, feel like a physical blow. I can hear my heart pounding in my ears, a rapid, deafening rhythm. My older brother, Ryan, sits at the head table, his face as pale as a ghost, his mouth slightly agape in disbelief. My mother, Isabella, presses her hand to her chest, her eyes wide with horror. The gentle clinking of silverware against china has ceased completely, replaced by an eerie silence. I look down at my champagne glass, the golden liquid sloshing gently as my hands tremble. It's a symbol of this false celebration, a night that was supposed to be about my father's retirement but has turned into a public humiliation. How did I end up here? My family, the Thompsons, has been a prominent name in the city for generations. My grandfather started a small construction company, which my father, Henry, 65, transformed into Thompson Construction, one of the largest construction firms in the state. He's a man of strict principles, driven by success and tradition. My mother, Isabella, 62, is the epitome of a society wife. She's involved in numerous charity events, always dressed to the nines, and takes great pride in representing the Thompson name. Ryan, 37, is the perfect son. He graduated from Yale Law School with top honors and has been working at a prestigious law firm downtown. He's recently been made a partner, and everyone expects him to take over the family business when my father retires. He's married to Lily, a wealthy socialite, and they live in a mansion on the outskirts of the city. From a young age, I was different. While Ryan played with building blocks and talked about skyscrapers, I spent hours in our garden, sketching flowers and creating imaginary worlds on paper. I remember the first time I held a crayon. It felt like an extension of my soul. I begged my parents for art classes, and they reluctantly agreed, thinking it was just a phase. In high school, Ryan was the star athlete and class president, while I was the quiet girl in the art room, lost in my own creative world. My guidance counselor suggested I apply to art schools, but my parents were adamant. They wanted me to study business or law, something practical that would benefit the family company. The conflict reached a boiling point when I was 17. I wanted to major in graphic design at the local art college, but my parents insisted on business administration. We had endless arguments, shouting matches that left me feeling exhausted and defeated. Eventually, we reached a compromise. I could minor in art as long as I majored in marketing. College was a breath of fresh air. My marketing classes were tolerable, but my art and design courses were where I truly came alive. I spent every free moment in the art studio, learning new techniques and creating designs that my professors praised. During my junior year, I started taking freelance graphic design jobs to pay for my art supplies. What began as a side gig quickly turned into a passion project. After graduation, my parents expected me to join Thompson Construction immediately. But I couldn't ignore my calling. I told them I wanted to pursue graphic design professionally. The disappointment in their eyes was palpable. They gave me 1 year to get it out of my system before joining the family business. That 1 year turned into 11. I built a successful freelance graphic design business, working with small businesses, nonprofits, and startups. I wasn't making Thompson Construction money, but I was happy. I was doing work that I loved, that fulfilled me. However, my parents never truly accepted my career choice. Sunday dinners at their house were always tense, with Ryan talking about his latest legal cases and my parents barely acknowledging my work. 3 months before my father's retirement party, he called a family meeting. We gathered in his study, surrounded by awards and photos of his successful career. My father cleared his throat and announced his retirement. Ryan would take over as CEO of Thompson Construction, a decision that had already been approved by the board. Then, he turned to me with what he called an exciting opportunity. He wanted me to come on board as the director of marketing and communications for the company. The salary was more than double what I made freelancing, with stock options and a clear path to advancement. It was an offer that any rational person would jump at, but all I could think about was the creative freedom I would lose. Thompson Construction's marketing was conservative and traditional, focused on appealing to established clients. There would be no room for my innovative, colorful designs. I told them I needed time to think about it. My father's face darkened. "Time to think about what, Emily? This is exactly what you've been working towards," he said, his voice stern. I tried to explain that my freelance work was fulfilling, that I had clients who depended on me. Ryan tried to intervene, suggesting we could structure the role to allow some outside projects. But my father wouldn't listen. "You've had 11 years to play artist. It's time to grow up and take some responsibility," he roared. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I thought about all the hard work I had put into my business, the awards I had won, and the nonprofits I had helped. But in my father's eyes, it was all worthless because it didn't have the Thompson Construction name on it. I stood up and told them I couldn't accept the position. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother's coffee cup rattled as she set it down, and Ryan stared at his hands. My father's face turned red with anger. "You're making a mistake, Emily. A selfish, short-sighted mistake," he said. Over the following weeks, the tension at home was unbearable. Conversations stopped when I entered the room, and my parents treated me like a stranger. Ryan called me regularly, trying to convince me to reconsider, but I was firm in my decision. The retirement party planning was a clear indication of my outsider status. My mother involved Ryan in every decision, from choosing the venue to selecting the menu. When I offered to design the invitations, she politely declined, saying they had already hired a professional firm. I wasn't asked to give a speech, wasn't included in the planning committee, and wasn't even consulted about the guest list. 2 weeks before the party, I received my formal invitation in the mail. It was addressed to Ms. Emily Thompson in an impersonal font, just like all the other guests. There was no personal note, no family dinner invitation, just the standard invitation with RSVP instructions. I almost didn't go. I spent nights staring at the invitation, wondering if my presence would make things better or worse. But in the end, I decided to attend. This was my father's retirement, a significant milestone in his life. I hoped that the celebratory atmosphere would soften everyone's hearts, and we could start to repair our broken relationship. On the morning of the party, I stood in front of my closet for hours, trying to decide what to wear. Every dress felt like a statement, and I wasn't sure what message I wanted to send. Too formal, and I'd look like I was trying too hard to fit in. Too casual, and I'd be disrespecting the occasion. I finally settled on a simple black dress, elegant but understated. As I drove to the Silver Lake Country Club in my old Honda Civic, I felt a sense of unease. The club was a symbol of my family's wealth and status, and I suddenly felt out of place. Valets in white jackets took keys from guests arriving in luxury cars, while I parked my modest vehicle at the back. Inside, the ballroom was transformed into a magical wonderland. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and servers in black uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I recognized most of the guests from years of family social events. There were politicians, business leaders, and community figures, all dressed in their finest. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests with practiced smiles. My father looked handsome in his tuxedo, while my mother was a vision in her navy blue gown. When I approached them, their smiles faded slightly. My mother kissed my cheek, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "You look nice, Emily," she said, her voice lacking warmth. My father shook my hand, his grip firm but cold. "Good to see you," he said, his tone polite but distant. I quickly excused myself and found my assigned table. It was far from the head table, where my parents and Ryan would sit. My table mates were pleasant enough, but the conversation felt forced. They asked polite questions about my work, but I could tell they were just being courteous. When I mentioned graphic design, their eyes glazed over. My aunt, Clara, my father's younger sister, found me during the cocktail hour. She's always been the rebel in the family, choosing to become a social worker instead of following the traditional path. She gave me a warm hug. "You look beautiful, honey. How are you holding up?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. I shrugged. "I'm okay," I said, not wanting to admit how isolated I felt. We chatted about her work at the local shelter and my latest design projects. She was one of the few family members who genuinely cared about my career. "Your father is proud of you, you know. He's just having a hard time showing it," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I wanted to believe her, but my father's recent behavior suggested otherwise. Still, I appreciated her attempt to bridge the gap between us. As dinner was served, I watched my family from across the room. Ryan gave a heartfelt speech about my father's mentorship and the legacy he was leaving behind. Several business partners shared stories about my father's integrity and vision. The mayor presented him with a key to the city, recognizing his contributions to the community. My father beamed with pride as he listened to the speeches. This was his night, the culmination of decades of hard work. I found myself genuinely happy for him, despite our recent conflicts. Then, it was my father's turn to speak. He walked to the podium with confidence, his voice strong and clear as he thanked everyone for their support. He talked about the buildings that would stand as monuments to his work, the jobs he had created, and the impact he had made on the city. He thanked my mother for her unwavering support and spoke glowingly about Ryan, calling him the future of Thompson Construction. The room was silent, hanging on every word. I felt a mix of emotions, pride in my father's accomplishments, but also a growing sense of dread. I knew he was about to say something that would change everything. His eyes met mine across the room, and he paused for a moment. "I've been blessed with a wonderful family," he said. "My son, Ryan, has made me prouder than any father could ask for. But tonight, I also want to acknowledge my daughter, Emily." For a brief moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he was going to surprise me, show me some love and acceptance. But then, the words that followed shattered my heart. "You're the biggest disgrace to this family," he said, his voice booming through the ballroom. The room fell silent. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, their shock and judgment like a weight on my shoulders. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. I looked down at my champagne glass one last time, then raised it high. "Perfect. Then erase me from your will, too," I said, my voice ringing out clearly. My father's face turned pale, and the champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the room, a symbol of our broken relationship. I took a deep breath and let out all the pent-up anger and frustration. "You want to know what I've contributed to this family? I've contributed my silence while you've spent 11 years telling me I'm a failure. I've contributed my presence at every family dinner, even though you've made it clear that my work is worthless. I've contributed my patience while you've tried to force me into a mold that I don't fit," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I talked about my business, the awards I had won, and the nonprofits I had helped. "But none of that matters to you, because it doesn't have Thompson Construction on the letterhead," I said. Ryan started to stand up, probably hoping to intervene, but I held up my hand to stop him. "This is my moment," I said. "You know what the real disgrace is? It's that you've spent my entire adult life trying to make me feel ashamed of what I love. It's that you'd rather have a miserable daughter working in your company than a happy daughter succeeding on her own terms." My father tried to speak, but his voice came out as a croak. "Emily, you're making a scene," he said. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm making a scene? You just called your own daughter a disgrace in front of 200 people, and you're worried about me making a scene?" I said. The crowd was completely captivated. People were taking out their phones, recording the drama unfolding before them. I took a final sip of my champagne and set the glass down on the table. "I'm going to walk out of here and build the most successful design firm this city has ever seen. And when I do, remember that you had the chance to be proud of me," I said. With that, I turned and walked towards the exit. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, allowing me to pass. I could feel the eyes on me as I left, but I didn't look back. I drove home in a daze, the events of the night replaying in my mind. When I got home, I sat in my apartment, still wearing my black dress, and stared at my phone as it lit up with calls from Ryan and other family members. I let them all go to voicemail. The next few days were a blur. Reporters called, wanting to interview me about the Thompson family scandal. Friends from high school reached out after seeing the videos on social media. But it was the business calls that surprised me the most. Several companies were interested in my design services, impressed by my public stand against family pressure. One of the calls came from David, the CEO of a tech startup. He'd seen the coverage of the party and was impressed by my passion for design. He offered me a 6-month contract to overhaul his company's brand identity. It was a big opportunity, and I knew I had to take it. I signed the contract and immediately started working on the project. It was the first time in a long time that I felt truly alive. The creative energy that had been suppressed for months came flooding back. 6 months later, I opened my own design studio, Elysian Designs. It was a raw, industrial space with exposed brick walls and large windows that let in streams of natural light. It was the perfect place for creativity to thrive. I hired my first employee, Ava, a recent art school graduate with a passion for design. Watching her face light up when I offered her the job was like seeing a younger version of myself. The business grew quickly. We took on projects for nonprofits, startups, and established companies. One of our most rewarding projects was a pro bono rebrand for a local women's shelter. Our new designs helped them increase donations by 60% in the first quarter. As our reputation grew, so did the recognition. We won several awards, and our work was featured in local business magazines. My father saw an article about our success. I know because Ryan told me. He didn't say much, but he read the article twice and left it on his desk for a week. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Part of me wanted his approval, but another part of me had moved on. I was focused on building my business and creating a life that I was proud of. A year after the retirement party, Ryan called me and told me that my father wanted to see me. I was hesitant at first, but I decided to hear him out. We met at the Silver Lake Country Club, the same place where everything had gone wrong. My father looked older and more fragile than I remembered. He stood up when I entered the room and looked at me with a mixture of guilt and regret. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice soft. "What I said at the party was wrong. I was wrong to try and force you into a career that you didn't want." He then pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. "Thompson Construction is struggling. Our marketing is outdated, and we're losing younger clients. I want to hire Elysian Designs to rebrand the company," he said. It was a surprising offer. I looked at him, trying to read his intentions. "Why now?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Because I've realized that there are different ways to measure success. I've been watching you build your business from nothing, and I'm proud of you. I want to work with you," he said. I thought about it for a moment. It was a chance to prove myself to my father, but I also didn't want to be taken advantage of. "This will be strictly business. No family discounts, no special treatment," I said. He nodded. "I understand," he said. We spent the next hour discussing the scope of work and the timeline. It was the first real business conversation we had ever had, and I was surprised by how well we communicated. Over the next few months, we worked on the rebranding project. It was a challenging but rewarding experience. We created a modern, innovative brand identity for Thompson Construction that helped them attract new clients. Our professional relationship improved, but our personal relationship was still a work in progress. My father started to respect my work, and I began to understand his perspective. 2 years after the retirement party, I stood in front of a large audience, accepting the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award from the local business association. The ceremony was held at the Silver Lake Country Club, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone. In my acceptance speech, I talked about the importance of following your passion and the courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in. I didn't mention the family drama, but many people in the audience knew the backstory. My father was in the audience. When our eyes met, he nodded slightly, a silent gesture of approval. After the ceremony, he approached me. Congratulations, Emily.
You've earned this, he said.
As I looked at him, I realized that his opinion no longer had the power to define me. I had built a successful business, a supportive team, and a life that I loved. I had finally found my own path, and I was proud of who I had become. Looking back on that fateful night at the retirement party, I realized that it was the catalyst for change. It was a painful experience, but it also taught me the importance of staying true to myself. Sometimes, the greatest gifts in life come from the most unexpected places. And even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for a brighter future.